Who are going to be the winners and who are going to be the losers in the next housing market crash? I see all kinds of videos on YouTube addressing the next housing market crash, how bad it's going to be, when it might come, but I don't see too many people talking about who's going to come out ahead when this happens and who's going to lose out big time. And today, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. Now let's start things off on a positive note and let's go over the winners first. Who's going to be coming out ahead when the market crashes? And the first person I think who's going to be coming out ahead is going to be anybody who bought a house 12 months or more ago. And why am I saying that? I'm saying that because chances are you were still able to get a house before prices went absolutely insane like we're looking at right now. And you were able to lock in a historically low interest rate that we may never see again. So if that's you and you were able to buy a property, 12 months ago, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, even if you bought in the last 6 months, but you feel like you got a really good deal and you don't feel like you really overpaid for the property, then you are definitely somebody who's going to be winning when the housing market crash comes. Another person who I think is going to fare pretty well when the housing market crash comes is any smart real estate investor that has cash flowing real estate that they either bought a long time ago or even if they bought it recently, but it cash flows nicely on the day they bought it before we started seeing all these crazy rental increases coming. Because if you have a property that's cash flowing under normal circumstances, that's a good position to be in, guys, because here's the thing. Whenever the housing market crash does come, all that's going to do is it's going to reinforce and actually make more of a demand for rentals, because if people lose their homes for one reason or another, whether it's on affordability or they lose their job, whatever the case may be, they still need somewhere to live. And typically in the past, whenever a housing market crash comes, it doesn't affect the rental market all too much. We might see rental prices come down a hair, maybe 10% or so, but I would even argue with how tight even rentals are right now, we could even see rental prices go up if there's a housing market crash. So if you're a landlord who owns cash flowing units right now, you're definitely going to be doing well when the crash comes. By the way, I'm bringing you this video today from North Shore Park here in Miami Beach, and as you can see, it's like a jungle behind me. It's one of the coolest things about this park. They have a large part of it kind of closed off here with the fence, and they try to conserve it and make it look like as much as it did back in its native state. And back in the day when I first moved here, you used to be able to actually walk through a section of here, and it was kind of like walking through the forest, walking through a jungle right here in the middle of the city, which is pretty crazy because right over here we got Collins Avenue. You guys can see the traffic out there. So it's kind of neat to have this park with all these trees and all this nature literally right next to the busiest street in town. So it's pretty neat. Now the next winner in this upcoming housing crash is going to be anybody who ignored buying into the FOMO. Okay, there's so much hype right now about getting in now before interest rates go too high and you're completely priced out, or the prices go too high and you'll never be able to afford a house again. And I actually made a video about that recently. The video was about what would happen if the housing market never crashes. So I'm not saying that's not possible, but it's probably pretty unlikely. Okay, so anybody who's actually worried about that right now and who's FOMOing into buying a house, especially one they don't even like or can barely afford, just because they're worried about not being able to ever buy something in the future, I think that's a pretty dangerous situation to be in. Eventually they're going to build more housing, eventually the supply chains are going to get back on track, and everything's going to return to a somewhat previous normal that we saw before the pandemic. I'm not saying that's going to happen tomorrow, but anybody who bought as a FOMO buyer right now is going to be in trouble, okay? And if you're somebody that was strong enough to ignore this and go with your gut and realize, hey, there's no emergency, especially if you're younger, right? If you're like in your 20s or something and you were thinking about buying a house and, it's just been competitive out there and you're losing bids left and right, maybe now's not the right time, because you're going to overpay for a house probably, and they're going to build more houses in the future, especially in areas where there's still a lot of land left. So if you didn't FOMO into the market, you are going to be one of the winners. And very similarly, if you waited, like say you can't find a house right now that you like, you're getting outbid, and you've kind of given up the search, right? And you say, you know what, I'm not going to be a part of this. I'm not going to be trying to get a house in this crazy market. Well, your patience could actually pay off. You could end up being one of the lucky winners who ends up, getting the house that they really wanted in a location that they wanted because you waited a few more years for things to correct and get back to normal. You could be a winner. And that's something I really want to stress in this video, because patience pays off, guys. One of my recent videos is proof of that. When you're patient and you know what you're looking for and you just wait it out to see when something will arrive, eventually something will come up. At least that's what history teaches us, okay? The patient are the ones who win. And I want to just address also one quick point in this video, is that when I'm referring to a market crash, I'm referring to a situation where housing prices dip 20% or more in a relatively short period of time, in let's say a year or less. So basically all the appreciation that was gotten over the past year and a half is now gone, and in some markets where things have gotten really nuts, it could be much worse than that. So that's what I'm referring to as a crash. If there's a slight correction, a lot of this stuff doesn't apply, and I just want to make it clear on what I mean when we're talking about a housing market crash. So we talked about who's going to be the winners. Now, who are going to be the losers? Well, the first one who I think are going to be the big time losers is anybody who's paying a gross amount over asking price for a house anywhere. I don't care where it is in the country. If you're overpaying for a house by $30, $40, $50, $100,000, which is common in some markets right now, you're going to be a big loser when the housing market crash comes, because those are the places that are probably in the biggest bubble right now, and where people are FOMOing into the market more than anywhere else. And unfortunately, the places that are seeing the largest gains are probably going to be the ones seeing the largest losses when the housing market crash does come. You're also probably going to end up losing if you're out there buying out of desperation right now, for fear that you're never going to be able to buy a house ever again if you don't buy one now. And chances are, guys, that just probably won't be the case. It might be for the next few years, but it's probably not going to be like that forever. So if you're out there being desperate right now, desperate people make stupid decisions, and some of those stupid decisions are things like overpaying for a home, buying in a neighborhood that they don't like, being too far away from work. The commute is an hour or more just to save a little bit of money. There's a lot of things that desperate people do in desperate situations that they regret later on, and you could end up being a loser when the housing market crashes if you're desperate right now. Also, if you're an investor or a landlord who's being extremely greedy right now, doubling your tenants' rents or raising them by 50% overnight, whenever the housing market crash comes, you could also end up being a loser, because, well, first of all, what goes around comes around. If you're gouging people right now in hard times, then you may end up being the one getting gouged when things turn around, because if the economy's bad and people are losing their jobs, they're not going to be able to afford to pay this extremely high rent, and you'll be forced to lower your prices back down. And by then, chances are you probably kicked out a really good tenant that was taking care of the place and paying on time every month, all for some extra money, and that almost never is worth it, and you could end up being a loser then too. Another potential loser coming up real soon could be home flippers as well. I don't know this for sure, it's kind of just a guess, but it kind of really depends. It depends on how well you know what you're doing, how well you know your market. Because prices are getting at all-time highs now, if you're trying to flip in this market, it can be very dangerous, because first of all, you don't really know when it's going to turn, and you won't be able to turn that flip for a profit anymore. And also, it's getting really hard to find deals that make sense buying. If you're finding stuff that needs a ton of work, but it has the biggest price tag on it that it's ever had in its lifetime of the property, it's going to be tough to make money on flips like that. So I would be cautioning you, if you are a flipper and you're trying to cash out before everything goes sour, because you might want to cash out right now while things are still good, because we don't know how much longer we got until things aren't so good anymore. So if you don't want to be a loser when the housing crash comes, you should probably cash out now if you're a flipper, or proceed at your own risk. So guys, what's it gonna be? Are you gonna be a winner or are you gonna be a loser in the next housing market crash? Only you can decide that for yourself, but I will tell you that the decisions that you make today are going to determine that in the very near future. Now check out this video I did about what happens if the housing market never crashes. I know it sounds crazy, but we're in unprecedented times here and pretty much anything is possible, I believe. It's probably unlikely, but hey, you never know. Check it out over there and I'll catch you guys over there.